My name is Scarlett Hayes, and at 34 years old, I had spent almost half my life building systems that kept hospitals alive during cyber attacks. Not metaphorically, literally. The software I designed routed emergency patient records between 63 medical centers across the Midwest. If a hospital server crashed at 2 in the morning because some idiot clicked the wrong email attachment, my infrastructure stepped in before doctors even realized something had failed. People survived because my systems worked. But in my own family, I was the disappointment. That title belonged to me so completely, my older brother used it like a nickname. He used it the night everything finally shattered. The night he stood under a crystal chandelier in front of 300 wedding guests, wrapped an arm around my shoulder like we were best friends, laughed into a microphone, and called me the cautionary tale of the Brooks family. And the billionaire investor standing beside him stopped smiling. That was the moment the room changed. That was the moment my brother realized the quiet woman he spent 10 years humiliating was the same woman holding the truth that could destroy the company he built his entire life around. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. Quiet stories about ordinary women, impossible families, and the exact moment people realize they underestimated the wrong person. If you've ever been treated like background noise in your own family, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let me take you back to where this started. 3 months before the wedding, I was sitting alone in my apartment in Chicago, eating takeout noodles straight from the carton while debugging a routing failure for St. Mary's Hospital in Milwaukee. It was 11:46 p.m., rain hammered the windows, my laptop fan sounded like it was fighting for its life, and my phone buzzed with a notification from a family group chat I hadn't seen in almost a year. Brooks family. They had added me back, not because they missed me, not because anyone apologized. My brother Ethan had typed one sentence: "You coming to the wedding or what? Don't make this weird." That was Ethan. Every sentence sounded like a threat disguised as a joke. Underneath his message, my mother immediately added, "Please answer quickly, Elena. Vanessa's family is very particular about seating." Vanessa Hartwell, Ethan's fiancée, daughter of Martin Hartwell, tech investor, private equity shark, the kind of man whose companies ended up on CNBC while regular people sat at home wondering how somebody made that much money before age 50. I knew the Hartwell name because everybody in infrastructure security knew it. Hartwell Capital funded healthcare systems. My systems. I stared at the message. Then my father sent one. 4 words. It would mean a lot. My dad almost never texted me. He communicated mostly through silence. Silence at dinner, silence during arguments, silence while my mother and brother slowly turned me into the family punching bag over the course of 15 years. I set my phone face down on the table. My noodles had gone cold. Here's what you need to understand about the Brooks family. We had one golden child, one success story, and according to my mother, it sure as hell wasn't me. It was Ethan Brooks. Charismatic, loud, handsome in the polished startup founder way, the kind of guy who wore expensive sneakers with suits and called everybody buddy even when he couldn't remember their names. At 31, Ethan launched a cybersecurity startup called Sentinel Forge. My mother talked about Sentinel Forge like it cured cancer. The local paper did features on him, LinkedIn posts, regional entrepreneur awards. My mom shared every article like she personally built the company herself. Meanwhile, I worked 70-hour weeks designing infrastructure hospitals actually depended on. And whenever anybody asked what I did, my mother waved her hand and said, "Oh, Alina just does computer support stuff." Computer support stuff. That was how she described the work keeping ICU networks alive during ransomware attacks. I stopped correcting her years ago, because correcting people only matters if they care about being accurate, and my family never wanted accuracy. They wanted a story. Ethan was the star, I was the contrast. Every hero needs somebody standing nearby looking smaller. That was my assigned role. The last time I visited my parents' house before the wedding was Thanksgiving. My mother spent 3 straight hours talking about Ethan's investor meetings, how exhausted he was, how brilliant he was, how hard startup life could be. At one point, our neighbor, Mrs. Campbell, turned towards me and asked what I'd been working on lately. Before I could answer, Ethan smirked across the table. "Elena builds invisible stuff nobody notices unless it breaks." Everybody laughed. Even my father. Just a little. That hurt worse, because tiny laughs are honest. Big laughs perform. Small ones slip out before people remember to hide themselves. I spent most of my career at Northgrid Systems, Senior Infrastructure Architect, Healthcare Cybersecurity Division. I wasn't flashy. Nobody at Northgrid would call me charismatic, but when systems failed, people called me. I built recovery frameworks that restored hospital networks in minutes instead of hours. I designed a live failover architecture called Atlas. Atlas handled over 280 million secure patient data transfers every day. Nobody in my family understood what that meant. Honestly, most don't. Infrastructure work is weird that way. If you do your job perfectly, nobody notices you exist. But hospitals notice when their systems die. Patients notice, doctors notice, and somewhere along the line, I started confusing invisibility with worth. Like if nobody clapped for me, maybe what I built didn't matter. That's what happens when people spend years treating you like the least impressive person in the room. You start apologizing for taking up space, even in rooms you built. 2 weeks before the wedding invitation message, Ethan called me. Not texted. Called. That alone made my stomach tighten. "Hey, sis." His voice sounded smooth. Too smooth. Like a salesman trying to keep somebody from hanging up. "You coming?" I said yes already. "Cool, cool." Pause, then casually, "And hey, don't get weird around Vanessa's dad." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "You know." "No, actually, I didn't. You start talking technical and people get uncomfortable." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes your body laughs when your brain finally gets tired of being disappointed. "People?" I asked. "Or you?" Silence. Then Ethan sighed dramatically. "Jesus, Alina, not everything's a fight. Just let me have this weekend, okay?" Let me have this weekend. Like I'd spent years stealing attention from him. Like I hadn't spent most of my adult life shrinking myself to keep family dinners peaceful. What Ethan didn't know was this. 4 years earlier, Sentinel Forge almost failed before it even launched, and I was the reason it survived. Back then, Ethan called me crying. Actually crying. His startup demo was 11 days away, his engineers quit, his infrastructure prototype didn't work, and investors were flying in. "I just need help getting through the pitch," he told me, "just enough so the system looks real." I should have said no, but he was my brother, and some part of me still believed helping people might finally make them love me correctly. So I helped. For 19 straight nights after work, I sat in my apartment building Sentinel Forge's core threat routing architecture. Not company property, not Northgrid code. My own work, my own designs, my own methodology. I wrote everything from scratch, fast, clean, scalable, beautiful. The kind of architecture engineers recognize instantly because elegant systems have fingerprints. Ethan promised equity, a formal credit, consulting compensation. He gave me $5,000, and then he quietly removed my name from every technical document connected to the company. 6 months later, Sentinel Forge appeared in a startup article describing Ethan as the brilliant architect behind a revolutionary healthcare security framework. I remember reading that sentence at 1 a.m., alone, still wearing my work badge, and realizing my brother had stolen more than code. He stole authorship, identity, recognition. The architecture was mine. The headlines became his. I almost confronted him once, but my mother would have defended him. She always did. My father would have stared at the floor, and Ethan would have laughed. So instead, I archived everything, because engineers keep records, version histories, commit logs, timestamps, contracts, documentation. The proof sat inside a black accordion folder in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not because I planned revenge. I kept it because that's what builders do. We document our work. That folder contained the consulting agreement Ethan signed, original architectural diagrams, commit histories, email chains, one specific message sent at 2:13 a.m. Please save this. Investors are coming Monday. I didn't open the folder for years. I told myself the past was dead. Then, 2 months before the wedding, something changed. Northgrid's executive director nominated me for a national cybersecurity infrastructure summit in Seattle. My name appeared beside people I admired for years, real architects, real builders. And for the first time in a long time, I started wondering whether the version of myself my family described maybe wasn't real. Maybe I wasn't the failure. Maybe I'd just been standing inside the wrong story. Then the LinkedIn message arrived, Wednesday, 8:12 a.m., from a senior technical analyst at Hartwell Capital. Subject line, quick question regarding Sentinel Forge infrastructure provenance. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold. The message was professional, specific, dangerously specific. Miss Brooks, during a technical review of Sentinel Forge's infrastructure architecture, our team identified structural similarities between your published work on Atlas and the proprietary framework currently presented by Sentinel Forge. We would appreciate clarification regarding authorship and development history. Could we schedule a call this week? There it was, the collision. Quiet, professional, inevitable. Hartwell Capital had done real due diligence, and somebody smart on their technical team recognized my fingerprints inside Ethan's company. My chest tightened, not because I was scared, because suddenly I understood exactly how fragile Ethan's empire actually was. His company depended on one thing, the story, that he built it, that he invented it, that he was the genius founder my mother bragged about to strangers in grocery store checkout lines. But code tells the truth. Architecture tells the truth. Real builders leave signatures inside systems whether they mean to or not, and Hartwell's analysts had found mine. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the black accordion folder, and set it on my desk, and stared at it for a very long time. I remember thinking something strange, not anger, not revenge, just this. I am so tired of pretending my work belongs to somebody else. I called my best friend Maya that night. Maya had known me since college. She once described my family dynamic perfectly after meeting them for Thanksgiving. Your brother is a Broadway production and you're a power plant. What does that even mean? I asked. It means everybody notices him until the lights go out. I told her about the LinkedIn message. Long silence. Then, oh, damn. Yeah. Alina, what are you going to do? I stared out my apartment window. Chicago traffic glowed red below me in the rain. I'm not lying about my work anymore. That was the sentence. Simple, clean, true. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't trying to destroy Ethan. But if somebody directly asked whether I built Sentinel Forge's core infrastructure, I wasn't going to erase myself to protect him. Not anymore. The rehearsal dinner happened at a luxury rooftop restaurant overlooking downtown Dallas. Vanessa's family had money, the kind that turns hotels into private venues and hires violinists for cocktail hour. I arrived in a black dress, simple, sharp, elegant without trying too hard. My mother hated it immediately. "You look intimidating," she whispered. Translation, I looked too confident. Ethan hugged me like we were close. He smelled like expensive cologne and panic. "You made it." "Clearly." "Remember," he said quietly while smiling for photographs, "keep things light tonight." There it was again, the warning, the management, like I was some dangerous variable he needed to control. I found my seat near the back, far from Ethan, far from Vanessa's family. Always strategic. During dinner, Ethan gave a speech. Funny, charming, practiced. People loved him. Honestly, I understood why. Ethan knew how to perform certainty. That's a superpower in America. People confuse confidence with competence every single day. Half the country runs on that confusion. Then Ethan started introducing family members table by table. He described my parents warmly, talked about Vanessa like she hung the moon. Then he got to me. "And this is my sister Elena." He grinned. "She's basically the family IT department." People laughed politely. I looked down at my wine glass. Not embarrassed, just tired. So unbelievably tired. Then something unexpected happened. A man near Vanessa's father slowly turned toward me. Gray suit, silver hair, quiet eyes. He studied me for 1 second too long. Recognition. I felt it instantly. After dinner, while guests moved toward the terrace, that same man approached me. "Elena Brooks?" "Yes." "I saw you speak virtually at the Minneapolis Infrastructure Conference last year." I blinked. "Oh, you built Atlas, right?" "Yes." He smiled slightly. "My hospital network survived a ransomware attack because of your recovery framework." That hit me harder than I expected, because strangers respected my work more than my own family ever had. The man extended his hand. "David Mercer, CTO at Hartwell Medical Systems." Hartwell. My pulse jumped. The collision was already happening, and Ethan had no idea. That night in my hotel room, I barely slept. I kept replaying every conversation, every warning, every little joke Ethan made at my expense. And suddenly I understood something. He wasn't humiliating me because he thought I was beneath him. He was humiliating me because, somewhere deep down, he knew exactly who built the foundation under his feet. And insecure people don't just want success. They need witnesses. They need comparison. They need somebody nearby looking smaller. That was my role. Until it wasn't. The wedding happened that next afternoon. 5-star resort, outdoor ceremony, string quartet. White roses everywhere. The kind of wedding designed less for love and more for drone footage. I almost didn't go inside. Seriously, I sat in my rental car for 10 full minutes staring at the entrance, because some part of me already knew. After today, nothing in my family would ever be the same again. And honestly, that terrified me. People think toxic families are easy to walk away from. They're not. Because even after years of hurt, some small, stupid, hopeful part of you keeps waiting for them to finally love you correctly, keeps thinking maybe this time will be different, maybe this time they'll see you. I walked inside anyway, and 3 hours later, my brother stood under a chandelier, called me the family failure in front of 300 people, and the billionaire investor beside him went completely still.
The reception ballroom looked like something from a Netflix billionaire wedding special. Crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed tables, waiters carrying champagne like they were handling explosives. Everything expensive enough to stop feeling real. My table sat near the back beside a decorative indoor olive tree. Not hidden exactly, just forgettable. Ethan assigned the seating chart personally. Of course he did. I watched him move through the room, shaking hands like a politician 5 minutes before election results. Everybody loved him, or thought they did. That's the thing about charismatic people. Most folks don't realize they're watching a performance until the actor forgets his lines. Around 8:15 p.m., Martin Hartwell entered the ballroom, Vanessa's father. Tall, controlled, one of those men who barely raises his voice because the room adjusts itself for him automatically. The energy shifted the second he walked in. Ethan practically glowed, because this wasn't just family anymore. This was business. Hartwell Capital's investment would push Sentinel Forge into the big leagues. National expansion, major contracts, magazine covers. Everything Ethan had spent years chasing. I was standing near the bar drinking sparkling water when Ethan spotted me. His eyes lit up instantly. Not warmly, strategically. There's a difference. "Dad," Ethan called toward Martin Hartwell, "you haven't met my sister yet." Something inside me tightened, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't random. He wanted me visible and diminished. He wanted Hartwell to see me as harmless before the technical questions surfaced. If the quiet, awkward sister later claimed she helped build Sentinel Forge, it would sound pathetic, jealous, desperate. That was the play. Control the narrative before the facts arrive. Ethan wrapped an arm around my shoulders, too tight, like a warning. Martin Hartwell turned toward us, and Ethan smiled, big, bright, cruel. "This," he announced loudly, "is our family disappointment." Laughter scattered around the table. Not everybody, just enough. Enough to make it sting. Then my mother added her favorite line, the line she'd polished for years. "We don't brag about Elena." She laughed softly into her champagne, like humiliation was family tradition. My father looked down. I stood perfectly still. No smile, no fake laugh, no shrinking. I was done helping people humiliate me comfortably. Martin Hartwell didn't laugh. He looked at Ethan, then my mother, then me, and something in his expression changed. Not dramatically, just calculation, recognition. He stared at me for one long second, then said quietly, "Elena Brooks?" The room shifted. Tiny, almost invisible, but I felt it. "Yes." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Atlas architecture?" I nodded once. Now Ethan looked confused. Martin continued, "You designed Northgrid's hospital recovery infrastructure." "Yes." A pause, Then the sentence that cracked the night wide open. "So you're the Brooks attached to the Sentinel Forge Provenance Review." Dead silence. Absolute. Even the band seemed quieter somehow. Ethan's smile froze. "What?" Martin still looked at me. "Our analysts flagged structural similarities between Sentinel Forge and Atlas 6 days ago." Ethan laughed too quickly. "Oh, come on. Elena helped early on. Everybody borrows ideas in tech." Martin finally turned toward him. "No," he said calmly, "not like this." I could literally see Ethan recalculating in real time, trying to charm his way out, trying to regain narrative control. "Look, man," he said with a forced chuckle, "she's brilliant, okay? But she gets emotional about stuff." Emotional. There it was. The classic move. When insecure men can't challenge your competence, they challenge your stability. Martin ignored him. "Miss Brooks," he said, "did you design Sentinel Forge's foundational routing architecture?" Every instinct in my body screamed at me to soften the answer. Protect the family, protect my parents, protect the peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace, it's hostage negotiation. So I answered, clearly, yes. No drama, no speech, just truth. The original architecture was built by me 4 years ago under a consulting agreement. The intellectual property was never formally transferred. My mother inhaled sharply. Ethan immediately stepped forward. "She's twisting this." "No," I said quietly. His face flushed. "You're seriously doing this right now? You asked a direct question in front of an investor." Martin folded his hands. "Can you explain the adaptive threat balancing protocol inside Sentinel Forge's live response engine?" Ethan blinked. "What?" "The protocol." Ethan laughed nervously. "I mean, my engineering team handles implementation specifics." Martin interrupted gently. "Your documentation describes it as your proprietary innovation." Silence. Ethan looked at me, and for the first time in his life, I saw fear. Real fear. Because suddenly the room contained 2 versions of him. The version he sold people, and the version standing in front of the truth. My mother jumped in instantly. "Martin, this is just sibling drama." "No," Martin said, still calm. "This is due diligence." That sentence hit Ethan like a truck. Because investors don't care about feelings. They care about ownership, liability, risk. And right now, Sentinel Forge looked radioactive. Ethan turned toward me fully. "You bitter little—" "Ethan," my father said his name quietly. First time he'd spoken in 15 minutes. Ethan ignored him. "You couldn't stand seeing me succeed." I stared at him. "No," I said softly. "I just stopped agreeing to disappear." That shut him up. Not because the sentence was loud. Because it was true. Truth has weight. People feel it when it lands. Martin asked one final question. "Do you have documentation supporting authorship?" "Yes." That was it. Game over. You could actually feel the energy draining out of Ethan. The performance collapsed. His breathing got sharper. His smile disappeared completely. And then he did something almost sad. He looked around the room, searching for somebody to save him. My mother, my father, Vanessa, anybody. But nobody moved. Because lies work great right up until reality walks into the room carrying receipts. Martin grabbed his champagne glass too hard. It shattered in his hand. Guests gasped. Glass hit the marble floor. Vanessa froze near the dance floor, staring at him. Not angry, just stunned. Like she finally realized the man she married and the man she believed in might not actually be the same person. Blood dripped from Ethan's hand. He barely noticed. My mother rushed toward him immediately. "Oh my God, honey!" But Ethan wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. And I'll never forget that expression. Not rage, not exactly. More like panic mixed with betrayal. Like he genuinely believed I owed him my silence forever. Like my talent existed for his convenience. Martin Hartwell stepped back. Subtle, professional, final. "I think we're done here," he said. Ethan's face drained white. "Martin? Our legal team will follow up regarding the review findings." That corporate language? That's billionaire for "this deal is dead." Vanessa finally spoke, quietly. "You lied to me?" Ethan turned toward her. "Baby, listen. Did you lie to me?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And honestly, that was the loudest moment of the whole night. Because manipulative people survive through momentum, fast talking, confidence, narrative. The second silence catches them, everything starts collapsing. The reception kept going somehow. Music returned awkwardly. Waiters pretended not to stare. Guests whispered behind champagne glasses. My mother cornered me near the hallway 20 minutes later. Her face looked tight, sharp, like rage stretched across panic. "How could you do this to us?" Us. Not Ethan. Us. Like I was responsible for protecting the family fantasy at all costs. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You humiliated your brother." "No, he humiliated himself, publicly. You should have stayed quiet." There it was, the entire family dynamic in one sentence. My role wasn't daughter, it wasn't sister, it was absorber, silencer, human shock absorber for Ethan's ego. I looked at my mother for a long time, then asked something I'd never asked her before. Why was I always the one required to disappear? She blinked. Honestly, I don't think anybody had ever asked her directly. She looked away first. He needed support. So did I. That landed. I saw it. Tiny crack right behind her eyes. Then she hardened immediately, because some people would rather destroy relationships than admit they were wrong. My father found me outside near the valet area. The wedding music sounded distant now, muted, like another universe. Dad leaned against the stone railing beside me, older than I remembered, tired. "We invested everything," he said quietly. I closed my eyes. I knew. My parents put nearly their entire retirement fund into Sentinel Forge because Ethan promised them they'd all be rich. My father rubbed his face slowly. "You really built it?" That question hurt more than anything else all night, because even now, even after everything, he still sounded surprised. "Yes." Long silence. Then finally, "I should have listened more." That almost broke me, not because it fixed anything, it didn't, but because it was the first honest thing my father had said to me in years, the first moment he looked at me without Ethan standing between us. Martin Hartwell approached me near the entrance before I left. He stood with his hands in his coat pockets, calm, measured. "Miss Brooks?" "Yes?" "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not recognizing your position in this sooner." I shook my head. "You weren't responsible for my family." "No," he said, "but I should have realized the architect wasn't being credited intentionally." That sentence hit harder than I expected, because strangers saw my invisibility more clearly than the people who raised me. Martin continued, "For what it's worth, your reputation in this industry is exceptional." I laughed softly. "Funny, my family thinks I do computer support." To my surprise, Martin smiled. "America runs on infrastructure people nobody thanks properly." That line stayed with me. I drove back to my hotel around midnight.
Dallas lights blurred through tears I didn't realize were falling. Not because I regretted telling the truth, but because grief and freedom sometimes arrive wearing the exact same face. The fallout exploded fast. Hartwell Capital officially withdrew within 4 days. 2 additional investors backed out the following week. Industry blogs started asking questions about Sentinel Forge's architecture origins. Ethan tried damage control, interviews, statements, PR spin. But technical people talk, and once engineers started comparing architecture maps publicly, it was over. Code doesn't care about charisma. Eventually, Sentinel Forge downsized, then restructured, then disappeared quietly 18 months later. My mother blamed me for a long time.
Honestly, maybe she still does. Because some people can't survive emotionally without villains. And I ruined the story she built her entire identity around. But here's the part nobody expects. The part that actually changed me. 2 months later, I spoke at the Seattle Infrastructure Summit. Huge room, thousands of people watching online. For years, I would have hidden in the background, minimized myself, made my voice smaller so other people felt bigger. Not anymore. I stood on that stage, under white lights, wearing a navy suit, and talked about resilient healthcare architecture for 47 uninterrupted minutes. No shaking, no apologizing, no shrinking. And afterward, 3 young women waited near the stage exit. Engineers, early 20s, nervous. One of them looked at me and said, "I've never seen somebody like me doing this before." That almost wrecked me, because suddenly I understood something my family never taught me. Visibility matters. Not for ego, for permission. People need to see what's possible. And all those years I spent making myself invisible, somebody else might have needed to see me standing there. A month after the conference, my father called. Not texted, called. He asked if I wanted to have dinner. Just us. It was awkward, quiet, painfully human, but real. For the first time in my life, we talked without Ethan controlling the emotional temperature of the room. Dad admitted he ignored things because conflict scared him. I admitted silence had turned into resentment years ago. Nobody cried dramatically. Nobody gave movie speeches. Healing doesn't usually look cinematic. Sometimes it just looks like 2 exhausted people finally telling the truth. My relationship with my mother never fully recovered, and maybe that's okay. Not every broken thing needs rebuilding. Some things only teach you what you should stop carrying. Last winter, Northgrid promoted me to Director of Infrastructure Security. Atlas still runs. Millions of people still rely on systems I built without ever knowing my name. And honestly, that's fine. Because now, when I look in the mirror, I know exactly who I am, even if nobody applauds. I'm not the family disappointment. I was the foundation. The quiet person holding weight nobody else noticed. And the funny thing about foundations, people forget they're there, right up until everything above them starts cracking. So if you've spent years making yourself smaller so other people can feel important, hear me carefully. Stop. Your silence is not a peace treaty. Your invisibility is not kindness. And shrinking yourself will never finally earn love from people committed to misunderstanding you. Build your life anyway. Take up space anyway. Tell the truth anyway. Because one day the room changes. One day somebody asks the right question. And when that moment comes, let the truth stand up on its own.
If this story hit you somewhere deep, drop a comment. Subscribe for more quiet drama stories. And remember, just because they never bragged about you doesn't mean you weren't extraordinary the entire time.